The Sony A7S series has always held a very specific and clearly defined identity within Sony's camera ecosystem. From the beginning, it was never about high-resolution, still photography dominance, or all-purpose versatility. Instead, it was designed with a sharp focus on one mission: delivering exceptional low-light video performance in a compact hybrid body. For years, this philosophy made the A7S line one of the most respected tools among filmmakers, content creators, and professionals who prioritized sensitivity and clean image performance in challenging lighting conditions. However, as the industry continues to evolve rapidly, that once clear identity now feels less certain. The current silence surrounding the Sony A7S IV has created an unusual situation where absence itself is becoming a topic of discussion. In the camera world, long periods without leaks, prototypes, or official signals often raise more questions than answers. And in this case, that silence is beginning to feel deliberate rather than accidental. What makes the situation around the Sony A7S IV particularly interesting is not just the lack of information, but the contrast between expectation and reality. Typically, a successor to a major camera line follows a predictable pattern of rumors, incremental leaks, certification appearances, and gradual confirmation from industry insiders. Yet in the case of the Sony A7S IV, that familiar pattern feels disrupted. Instead of a steady buildup, there is fragmentation. Speculation exists, but it is inconsistent, scattered, and often contradictory. This has led many observers to question not just when the camera will arrive, but whether the Sony A7S IV is even proceeding in the way people originally expected. The idea that it might not simply be delayed, but potentially rethought or even quietly abandoned, is no longer a fringe theory. It has become part of the broader conversation. Interestingly, despite the uncertainty, the rumor landscape surrounding the Sony A7S IV is still active, but in a confusing way. On one side of the discussion, there are reports suggesting a conservative evolution of the existing formula. In this interpretation, the Sony A7S IV would remain true to the legacy of the series, focusing on incremental but meaningful improvements rather than radical changes. This version of the camera is often described as a refined continuation of the A7S III philosophy. It would likely feature a modestly updated sensor, possibly still around the lower megapixel range, potentially near 12 to 16 megapixels, but with significant enhancements in readout speed, dynamic range, and autofocus performance. The goal in this scenario would not be to increase resolution, but to improve efficiency and image quality at the sensor level. Faster readout would reduce rolling shutter artifacts, improve motion clarity in video, and enhance overall responsiveness in high-speed shooting environments. Combined with improved oversampling and better HDR handling, this approach would appeal strongly to purists who value clean low-light performance over specification-driven marketing battles. However, this is only one side of the rumor spectrum. On the opposite end, there are far more ambitious and disruptive expectations circulating within industry discussions. In this version of events, the Sony A7S IV would represent a major leap forward rather than a cautious update. Some speculation points toward a higher resolution stacked sensor, potentially in the 20 to 24 megapixel range, designed with next-generation architecture capable of handling extreme readout speeds. This would open the door to advanced video features such as full-frame 6K recording without cropping, significantly improved slow-motion capabilities, and more flexible internal processing pipelines. In this scenario, the camera could also introduce a triple base ISO system, dramatically improving performance across a wide range of lighting conditions. This would transform the Sony A7S IV into not just a low-light specialist, but a true hybrid cinema-grade tool capable of competing in far more demanding production environments. The problem is that these two visions are fundamentally different, and neither appears to have clear confirmation. One direction preserves the identity of the A7S series as a specialized low-light machine, while the other reimagines it as a more powerful and versatile cinema hybrid platform. The lack of clarity between these two paths has created what can only be described as narrative confusion. Instead of a unified direction, there are fragments of possibility that do not align. Some reports suggest Sony is being conservative, focusing on refinement and stability. Others claim the company is preparing a much more aggressive technological leap. There is no consensus, and in industries like this, lack of consensus often signals uncertainty in development direction. As time passes, the absence of concrete development signals becomes even more noticeable. In typical product cycles, even before official announcements, there are usually indirect indicators of progress. Prototype units begin circulating in controlled environments, certification filings appear in regulatory databases, and trusted leaks start aligning around a coherent set of specifications. With the Sony A7S IV, these signals appear inconsistent or missing entirely. Instead of a structured buildup, there is a kind of informational silence punctuated only by conflicting rumors. This deviation from normal product behavior is one of the reasons speculation has intensified. At the same time, the broader camera industry has not remained static. In fact, it has moved forward significantly since the last generation of A7S cameras was released. Competing brands have introduced higher resolution sensors, more advanced codecs, improved autofocus systems, and more aggressive video capabilities. The expectations placed on modern hybrid cameras have increased dramatically. Features that were once considered premium are now standard requirements. Users expect not only excellent low-light performance, but also high-resolution recording options, robust heat management, fast sensor readouts, and professional-grade video workflows. Meeting these expectations often requires more complex engineering solutions, including active cooling systems and more advanced internal designs. Until then, the silence continues. And in this industry, silence is rarely meaningless. It often signals transition, re-evaluation, or transformation. Whether that leads to a delayed release, a major redesign, or something even more unexpected remains unknown. But one thing is clear: the conversation around the Sony A7S IV is no longer just about specifications or release dates. It has become a discussion about identity, strategy, and the future direction of an entire camera philosophy.